Okay, I want everybody to listen carefully. You don't have to read. You don't have to read to be a good person. You don't have to read to be a smart person. You don't have to read to have a fulfilling life. You don't have to read. You can have all those things without reading. But if you think reading is one of those things which would enrich your life as it does mine, and most of the other people here on BookTube, I have some tips for you about how to read more books. Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to a video in which I go through 10 tips I have for how to read more books. It's January. Lots of people have New Year's resolutions, and some people's New Year's resolutions will likely be about reading books. Oftentimes we see people start BookTube channels, see people talking about reading more at this time of the year, much in the same way that people talk about going to the gym more. And just as with going to the gym more, there are some tips I think that can help you, keep up with this mission you have to read more. So I'm going to go through these really quickly. Number one, ask yourself, why do you want to read more? What is your motivation? What is it you want to gain from reading? This should be like what you think it will do for you, not to me, what you think it will do for how other people think about you or how other people feel about you. Reading is one of those things that's going to take time and it's going to take some effort on your part. And so I think, you having the proper motivation is important. Now, whatever that motivation is fine. If you want to read more so other people think you look smart, feel free to go ahead and do that. But, I think that's a kind of flimsy reason, and it makes me worried that you're not going to continue. But figure out what you want to read for, because in some ways that could dictate, what you choose to read and how successful you are at sticking with this idea of reading more. Second is define what more is. What is more to you? Is it 1 book a year? Is it 12 books a year? Is it 36 books a year? Is it 100 books a year? And this all depends on how much you already read. If you read nothing, if you don't read, if you went all last year and you maybe read 1 book or a half of 1 book or something like that, or no books at all, I think it's kind of unrealistic to say that for you, reading more would be reading 60 books, 5 books a month, or 100 books. And a lot of times what BookTube gives you an impression of is that lots of people are out there reading hundreds and hundreds of books. And to be honest with you, as my friend Olly from over his channel, in his video, Olly said in his video, he's kind of a freak. And we on BookTube are oftentimes kind of freaks in terms of the number of books we read and how much we enjoy reading. Create your own standard for how much more is. More to you is could just be 1 more book. And that's fine. Again, think about why you want to read more, and then think about how you're going to define more, and try to do that in a realistic way. You know your life, you know how busy you are, you know how much time you may have for reading. I'm retired, which means luckily I have a lot of time for reading. Not everybody's in that situation. Prompt number 3 is you do have to make time for reading, but make time for reading without making it a chore. If you make reading a chore, that is, you say, okay, I'm going to read every day for 35 minutes and I'm going to do it at this exact time. To me, that makes it feel more like an obligation and less like something that you might do for pleasure. That's just me. You may need that kind of regimentation. But, I would just, have in mind that you're going to spend some of your time when you're not working, when you're not doing family things, you're going to spend some of your time reading, instead of being on your phone, instead of playing games, instead of watching, whatever the latest Netflix or whatever series is, that you're going to spend some of that time reading and, commit to the idea that you're going to spend some time reading, which I think kind of goes really closely with my next tip. And that's tip number 4. And that is to keep your book handy. Whatever book you've chosen to read, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, but whatever your book you've chosen to read, in whatever format you've chosen to read it, keep that handy, keep it with you. The book I'm reading travels with me from room to room, from, the room where I sit with my family and read, to the bedroom where I read, to this room where I sometimes read. Sometimes I carry my book outside and read. Take your book with you, even if you don't pick it up and read it. There are a lot of times I take a book to bed with me and I never open it. But having the book handy, having the book kind of, right there is one of the ways in which I think you end up making time for reading. You set your phone down, there's your book, you pick your book up and read it. And you don't have to read a book for a long period of time to make a lot of progress in reading a book. I'm a really slow reader, so it takes me longer than most people. But, just having the book handy, picking it up in the odd moments and the odd minutes, you know, I think will help you get into reading and accomplish this idea of reading more books. My fifth tip is to increase your access to books. Now, I saw MJ is doing a series of videos about the joy of reading over her channel. I'll link her channel down below. And one of the things she suggests that everybody does is get a library card and get involved with the library. And this really echoes that. Somewhere you have access to a local library. And the truth matter is, these days, most local libraries are part of an electronic book lending service organization or consortium. And there's an app. The library I go to, my local library, uses the Libby app. And through the Libby app, I can check out books from that kind of consortium of libraries. I can check them out as ebooks, or I can check them out as audiobooks. As audiobooks, I can listen to them on my phone. I can read them as ebooks on my phone. If I have a Kindle, I can put them on my Kindle. There are other ways in which you can read these books, but just having that library there and using your library will dramatically increase your access to books without costing you really any money at all. So getting that library card and gaining that access is one of the good ways, I think, to kind of increase your reading. What is this? Number six. Number six idea is to read what you like. This is the most important thing, probably. And the thing where I think a lot of people kind of fall down if they made this resolution to read more. They feel like that as an adult, when they decide to read more, they should read serious literature. They should pick up the classics. And I'm telling you, unless you really want to read classics, read what you want, whether that's nonfiction, whether that is, what is the new thing? Fantasy romance, whether that's absolute smut, whether that's science fiction or history or, literary fiction, whatever it is that you think you want to read that. Choose books about topics you're interested in. Choose books set in places you might be interested in going. This is going to add a level of interest to the book and help kind of keep you going, help you get you into that book from the beginning. Read what you like. Don't worry about what anybody else is reading. Read the book you want to read. Read the things that you are interested in. Don't worry about anybody else, including me or others here on BookTube, but I'll get back to this again in a minute. Tip number 7, shorter books are kind of your friend. I'm not telling you to go out and read, a whole bunch of 56-page books intended for, 10 to 12-year-olds, unless you're a 10 to 12-year-old. You can read those if you want to, and a lot of people find that to be really rewarding, and it's what they like to read. But when I say shorter books are your friends, if you go out and you decide, I'm going to read, War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, which is over 1,000 pages, and that's the book you're going to start reading as a part of this, determination you have to read more, I feel like you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. You may start reading War and Peace and go, this is the greatest thing ever, and, speed through all 1,000 pages. But what I think, and what happens to me, is that finishing a book creates kind of a sense of accomplishment. I've read that book. I can think about that book. I've added that book to, my experience as a reader. And so shorter books allow you to experience that sense of accomplishment more quickly, and you're less likely to get bogged down in them. You're less likely to just kind of, to give up on the book altogether. Along those same lines, though, here on BookTube, people talk about DNFing books. Don't be afraid to DNF the book. If you're started it and you're into it and you start reading it and it's not for you, don't be afraid to DNF the book, which brings me then to my next tip, and that is to always have the next book you want to read lined up. While you're reading whatever book it is, and however many books you intend to read, have a next book that you are excited about reading, a book that you want to read coming up next. That will not only help you generate momentum to get through the book you're reading, which you may also be enjoying, but it gives you something to look forward to. It creates a sense of anticipation. As I think MJ would tell you, it increases the joy of reading to look forward to and kind of, want to read the next book. So, I think what happens to a lot of people is they decide they're going to read more, they pick out a book, they read it, and then they don't automatically have a place to go next. And one of the things about reading more is I think it is a matter of momentum, and going directly from one book to the next will help you accomplish that. This should be then tip number 9. Tip number 9 is don't feel like you have to have the perfect atmosphere in which to read. I think a lot of people assume that to read more and to read more books and to read successfully, they have to be able to sit in a perfectly quiet place with absolutely no distractions and then devote a large amount of time to reading in that location. And if you're looking for that perfect reading location, if you're like most people, you're going to find that really difficult to find for long periods of time or for even short periods of time. So what I would say is, instead of trying to create the perfect reading atmosphere and creating the dependence on the perfect reading atmosphere to read, that you get used to reading in places maybe where there are distractions, outside at a park, in the room where your family is sitting, and just get used to concentrating through the distractions. I think that helps because it creates more opportunities for you to read. Now, obviously, we all like to be comfortable and, all those kind of things we're reading. I'm not trying to tell you, to read in a really uncomfortable place, but don't feel like everything has to be perfect for you to be successful in reading. And then the last thing I would suggest you to do is something, if you're watching this video, you've already done, and that is to watch booktube channels. Find booktube channels that read the kind of books you want to read, the kind of books you like. There are whole channels devoted to things, devoted to romance, devoted to fantasy, devoted to sci-fi, or a combination of those things, devoted to horror. There are whole channels and creators, sometimes big, sometimes small, devoted to whatever it is you want to read, nonfiction, it's history, whatever, that are devoted to whatever you want to read or you think you might be interested in, and they can give you great suggestions. And those suggestions then become that next book you want to read, which helps you create that momentum. Anyway, there you go. There are my tips on how to read more. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.